Welcome to the West Energy Podcast, powering your career. The energy transition plays a crucial role in Australia and the world's future, and the success of this shift hinges on the people driving it. This podcast will interview a diverse group of energy leaders to provide valuable perspectives on career development, leadership, navigating the energy transition, and discussing strategies to manage mental health and wellness in a high-pressure industry. I'm your host, David Smith, the founding partner and director of West Energy and West Recruitment. With over 20 years of recruitment experience and a team that specialises in recruitment across the whole energy supply chain, we're really excited to bring you this series. Welcome to the West Energy Podcast, powering your career with David Smith. I'm David Smith and thrilled, excited to have Heidi Sick join me today. So Heidi, Regional Business Line Director, Energy and Environment across Australia and New Zealand for AECOM. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here.
I did want to say congratulations on being named one of Australia's top 100 energy players for, I think, the second year in the row. So you had it 23 and 24. Congratulations once again, and must have been a great honour.
Thank you. Yes, it really was a great honour and a bit of a shock, actually, particularly the second one in a row.
Yeah.
So, it's fantastic to get that recognition from the industry. After, many years of ups and downs over the last 15, 17 years working in the energy sector.
Yeah. No, we're looking forward to unpacking that all, but congrats again. So to get us started, can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are in your own words?
Great. So I actually grew up down the Mornington Peninsula in a small town called Blackgowrie. And my mother is Scottish. My father was German and hairdresser and chef. They decided they both separately came to Australia and met in Sorrento and decided to stay there. But I was in my mum's tummy, and both their parents died, so they decided to settle in Sorrento. So it was quite a sliding doors moment for what my life could have been growing up in the other side of the world.
Yeah.
But my childhood wasn't much fun actually living down there because my dad was pretty strict as a German, and he was 12 years older than my mum, so he was pretty strict and pretty hard upbringing. And at the age of 10, they bought a restaurant in Blackgowrie. So my childhood, my high school years and university years were pretty much spent in the restaurant. Yeah. So initially they took us to the restaurant and sold us the dream. We thought, wow, we've got 2 houses. There was even a playground out the back of the restaurant. Yeah. We thought this is awesome, but quite quickly we were put to work. Yeah. So wasn't much fun.
You would have worked on your work ethic at a very young age.
Yeah, it really taught me the value of money. Yeah. I could see how hard they were working. I could see that if you were sick, you still had to turn up. And so that really taught me some long life skills. Yeah. It really made me focused on studying and trying to do well at school. And I was kind of good at maths and science, so really that flowed through. But my main goal was really study, try to move out of there, move up to Melbourne, get a degree and travel. I really wanted to travel the world. And so unfortunately choosing a degree or ending up in going down the engineering path that really allowed me to do that. So I worked for 5 years at a company called CSL, and quite quickly then, as soon as I could, took off and went overseas for about 8-9 years working for a company called Foster Wheeler. And travelled the world, a year in South America before coming back here. And I've been back here now for, it's probably about 17 years. But through all of that, I really love kind of adventure, outdoors, activities. And I've got 2 boys, so they keep me really busy sporting-wise, activity-wise. So hiking, snowboarding, wakeboarding, fishing. Yeah, they're the holidays I like.
Very good. So 3 other questions in terms of very quick fire questions to help our audience get to know you a little bit better. If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be and why?
I really like this question, and I have thought about this question before. Yep. No one's asked me. It would have to be the one and only Sir David Attenborough.
Oh,
yes.
He turned 99 the other day.
I know. So the reason for that is he's really profoundly shaped how we consider nature and climate. And it's been through quite a transitional time in our history, and he's obviously seen a lot related to what climate change has done to our planet. He's so calm and wise and just a beautiful man. And I think that my kids would really love to come to that dinner as well. They're very inspired by him.
I think that'll be a good one. The second question, what did you want to be when you were in school?
So I really didn't know, actually. I knew what I didn't want to be. I didn't want to have my own business.
Okay, not in a restaurant.
Definitely not a restaurant. I had actually thought about following the path of physiotherapy, but I didn't get enough points. So engineering was the backup option. Yeah.
Okay, obviously done well since then. And third, what's one thing most people don't know about you?
Yeah, I don't know, probably a lot of stuff.
You got to choose one.
Okay.
That's a hard part. You got to choose one.
I thought I'd just touch
and now all the listeners will know, so it's not going to be a secret.
I know. Well, actually, this is my first podcast, and I really don't like public speaking. So because of my upbringing, I was actually really shy, and so I've had to force myself into these situations as I've progressed through my life and career. A couple of instances of that, I became an aerobics instructor to
get yourself out of...
To get myself out of my comfort zone.
Way to throw yourself right in the deep end.
And then I took that to the next level.
Sorry, could you do aerobics?
I could do aerobics.
Okay. I was hoping so.
Yeah, I liked aerobics, but I also thought, well, this is a good way to get me up doing something I like in front of people. Yeah. And then the next level of that was actually I started learning salsa dancing, and I also decided that I'd perform on stage. So that was another thing to really get myself out of my comfort zone.
Wow. So. How does that go? Like, I presume if you're nervous, and I seventh podcast in, I still get nervous. I still get butterflies in the tummy. I still get a bit anxious. I hate public speaking myself, but how does it go in terms of the ability to dance in front of all people with that running through your body? I would imagine that'd be a little bit harder than sort of the public speaking side.
It literally is about 1,000 times more frightening than public speaking, because you've got this adrenaline surge that's going through your body, your entire body, and then you actually have to control your body and all your muscle movements to perform. Yeah. So it's quite an experience.
Yeah, way to get out of your comfort zone. So one of the things I love about doing this podcast is hearing how people's careers began, and you touched on this a little bit earlier. It's sometimes through chance moments or early influences. And in your case, two stories that you'd previously spoken to me about really stood out. So one was without a doubt working in your family's restaurant in Blairgowrie from a young age, and a pivotal conversation with a family member in Germany that sparked your interest in engineering, especially after not receiving much career advice or guidance at school. Can you share how those two moments helped shape your career journey?
Yeah, so I think the Blairgowrie one, as I said, it really focused me on a certain direction in terms of trying to get an education and what's out there, and really just wanting to explore the world, because those formative years were really quite constrained. Pretty much as soon as I was 25, I was like, right, I'm out of here. Yeah, okay. And I'm on to bigger things, and really wanting to explore the world and live life. But I think in terms of the engineering route, I asked, there wasn't a lot of career advice around at the time, as you mentioned. And so I'd asked my mum, and she was actually saying, why don't you become a secretary? You know, maybe.
Thanks, Mum.
No, thanks, Mum. And she said, maybe you could work for a lawyer, be a legal secretary, because they probably make more money. I'm like, okay, that's great. But thankfully, my cousin and his wife, they live in Germany. They were both chemical engineers, and they were quite close to my father. So as I was progressing through high school, we connected and we'd talk over the phone, and they basically gave me the exposure around what's possible, you know, if you're going to progress the engineering pathway, and particularly chemical engineering. And they even gave me the opportunity to move to Mexico City and live with them for 6 months while I was doing my industry-based learning experience at university. So that was probably the best experience of my entire life.
God, you talk about sliding door moments. Like, without that conversation, you maybe be that legal secretary that your mum had suggested. But a few conversations. It's amazing how much of an influence they can have on your career.
Yeah, just knowing someone and being able, because up until then it's really hard, and I think even today people find it hard to actually really understand. If you ask the general public, what's an engineer do? A lot of people wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Build bridges or something like that without knowing how many different engineers are out there.
So you mentioned you went on, you obviously studied chemical engineering at Swinburne, then you moved into operational roles at CSL and Foster Wheeler before eventually shifting into energy at Parsons Brinckerhoff as regional power manager. What prompted that move into the energy sector, and how would you describe where the energy industry was at that time?
Yeah, so the move was I spent probably the first part of my career, the first 5 years at CSL, so a state-of-the-art biotech facility, so quite a different industry. And when I moved overseas, I was working at Foster Wheeler that was also working on, I was very fortunate to work on a pharmaceutical facility from concept design all the way through to construction, commissioning, handover to client. So that was, a really big 5 to 6 years of working on one project. But I knew after that, if I was going to move back to Australia, there wasn't going to be too many new build pharmaceutical or biotech opportunities. So I thought, okay, now's the time to rethink what industry you want to work in if you're moving back. Yeah. And my friends were saying, you should work in oil and gas. There's so much money. It's booming over here. And it was at the point of the GFC as well as I was considering moving back. Yeah. But I'd also, living in Europe, I was starting to read a lot about climate change and the impacts of climate change, and actually realised that what needed to happen was going to be transformational, and that obviously the energy system played a really key component of that. So I made that decision then, right, I want to work in energy. I'm going to work in energy. When I move back to Australia, I'll study a few subjects, try and upskill a little bit and see what I do and what I can land. And I was really fortunate to land a role with Parsons Brinckerhoff, which was the consulting company now called WSP. But I was working in the climate change and resource efficiency group initially before taking over the power manager role. So thinking back then around what the industry was like was quite a lot different to what it was now. So 2009, heavily coal-based, basically maybe the odd small wind farm that was out there. Yeah. Solar wasn't really on the table at all, wasn't commercial. The government was really focused on how to clean up coal, so they had invested money in carbon capture and storage technologies. And I'd actually spent some time advising on that back in the UK before I came back to Australia. So that was my way into consulting actually, and into the power sector. So in through the cleaning up the dirty. Yeah. But my team was really looking at, we did some mining, so looking at power generation options for mining clients of remote power applications. And we were looking at building new combined cycle gas turbine power stations. So it was really, at the start of, it was well before things really started to kick off in the energy transition. But thankfully, ARENA had started to kick off their solar program, and they were investing money in how to commercialise large-scale utility solar. And so that was really the start. But there's a lot of ups and downs along the way in terms of emissions trading schemes being proposed, carbon pollution reduction schemes being repealed, finally the renewable energy target, but there was a lot of, wars around what that target should be. So, it was there's been a lot of ups and downs over that time. Yes.
So fast forward to now, you spent 15 years in consulting, as you said, working across Parsons that became WSP, AECOM, and now sitting with AECOM. Why has consulting been such a strong fit for you? And what do you personally love about consulting?
So it was never like that at the start. I must admit, the first day I walked into the job, I just went, oh my goodness, what have I done? Yeah. This is really challenging. Yeah. This is quite a new space. So I'd been at Foster Wheeler. Foster Wheeler was actually, a large EPCM company. So I was involved basically on a large project. There was no consulting. Is engineering. So it was quite a gear change to come across and into the consulting world. And I felt actually really exposed, and particularly being shy as well, and seeing all these consultants around me promoting themselves, talking to clients, standing up in front of people. I just thought, oh my goodness, this is next level. Yeah. But I actually remember saying to myself, you've got to give it 2 years, because that's the only way you're going to know whether or not you can't leave. I'm not a quitter. And then here I am 15 years later or 17 years later, I'm still here. And so it has been actually a really fantastic career path for me. So it's provided an opportunity to be a consultant, an advisor, to lead, a team manager. It was my first opportunity to manage people, to then manage a sector and a region, to be able to lead people, business, strategy. And while working in an industry that's so fascinating with a strong sense of purpose. For me, it's all around. All of my roles have had to be around having a bit. You're leaving the planet in a better state than what you found it. So here's the challenge of accelerating the transition. How do we decarbonise our economy? And so consulting ticks all the boxes for me.
So why should someone choose consulting over working in industry?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Here's your way to sell. Come work for Heidi.
So you do typically have a much broader exposure and things move much quicker. So you get broad exposure to what's going on in the industry, and you can really kind of select where you want to work and which part of the market and sub-markets you want to work across. It's really dynamic, it's fast-paced, really fast learning curve. You're constantly learning and you have to stay abreast of what's going on, current issues and looking ahead. So the variety, the ability to solve all sorts of different problems and to go, so many pathways you can go. So it keeps the work fresh and engaging. And quite often I hear people that have gone into industries say, oh, it's just so slow. And
Question off the cuff. Have you ever been tempted to make the shift into industry?
Yes, I have. I have. But obviously I started my career in industry, but in a different sector. Yeah. But no, I think right now, the exposure and the opportunity to progress your career is been really fantastic in consulting. So
I can only imagine the amount of projects you get involved with the size of the team and the scale of your business. So you're now leading AECOM's regional energy and environmental business, overseeing a team of 700. So I would imagine they will keep you nice and busy. When we initially caught up about this podcast, you said you never aspired to leadership, but someone early in your career saw something in you and you ended up leading one of the most engaged teams at Parsons at the time. What do you think helped you become an effective leader, even when it wasn't your original goal?
When I was working overseas, I was a contractor, so it was all care and no responsibility. Yep. I didn't have to manage anyone other than myself, which was fantastic. So when I did take on that first role, and I was coming from a background not in the energy sector, and I'd moved into the role with having no experience in that background. I really had to think, how the hell am I going to lead this team?
Yes.
so I just went, right, well, you have to trust your people. And then I realised you can't possibly know everything. So in life, you've just got to learn how to draw the best out of the people, understand what they know, what their strengths are, how to elevate that, and let them focus on where their passions are. That's the benefit of consulting, that you've got the autonomy to be able to do that. So I think it was all around making sure, from that point on, it was always around making sure I had the best people around me, trusting them to deliver. And
did that come easy to you?
It did, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm more of a relator, a relationship builder in my nature. So it did become easy, and it was really focused on, then individual relationships, but then the team dynamic and the team culture. So initially in my team meetings, my boss probably doesn't want to hear this, but I actually spent half the team meeting just talking and sharing stories about ourselves. And it was amazing the impact that it had, and the fact that we did actually have the highest engaged team for quite a number of years. And people didn't know why.
Yeah. And that's something you've flowed through to sort of where you sit today?
I'd like to think so. I think it's harder as you have more and more people.
We're going to say 700 people. I would imagine having individual stories of 700 might be a bit tougher these days, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's still I try and that is a work in progress. It takes time, obviously, but I do really focus on reaching out to people within the business and getting to know people in the business that are delivering and understanding issues and building relationships and building connections. So,
Yeah. And I imagine within consulting with us, it being so high pressure, it'd be so key. And I suppose it's every different industry, but so key as a leader that you are keeping tabs and checking in on your staff.
That's right.
build those relationships so you get to know them where they're up or where they're down. So
That's right.
So lately I've been having a lot of conversations where people are all saying the same thing. Life's getting busier and more complex. The juggle between work, kids, friends, exercise, and building a career feels harder than ever. So first and foremost, I know I agree with that comment. Is that something that resonates with yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay. I thought that might have been the case. So as someone who's raised two boys while navigating a demanding and successful career in consulting, how have you managed it all?
Well, let me say that I'm not through it yet by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
My boys are 13 and 11,
Yep.
Jasper and Rafi, and I think it's really going to ramp up now as they as they're teenagers, they actually need a different level of support. My husband has his own business, so our life is absolutely chaotic. Typically, ships in the night we are, and sometimes crossing flight paths during the day, handing over the baton to get home in time for the kids. So how do we deal with that? So I'm very fortunate that when we're both away at the same time, my mum or my mother-in-law comes and steps in and helps out with the kids, which is great. Functionally, on a day-to-day, I invite my husband to all of my events or travel, so he knows when I'm out of the country or not at home. He does the same for me. So I'm pretty lucky that I have got a very, very supportive partner, and he's actually giving me a lot of moral support and encouragement right throughout my career to step up and go for those opportunities that come up. But the juggle is and the chaos is real. And if you saw our house, you'd just be thinking, oh my goodness, just get a cleaner or get a nanny or get something. We've tried all sorts of different things, but we've had an au pair that lost our child once. So we try and stay away from the help of people that we don't know that well. Yeah.
So have you got it right now or?
No. Still, people are fascinated that we don't have a cleaner, but I think I'm really trying to encourage my boys to lift their game a bit as well and not be, they've got to learn how to look after themselves. So that's my kind of drive at the moment.
I might have to pick your brain off that. I'm just trying to get my two boys to bloody make their bed of a day, and that's proving to be a challenge, let alone cleaning the house. I might have to pick your brain on that one.
Yeah.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Powering Your Career. To stay updated with our latest episodes, don't forget to click follow or subscribe. Leaving a review goes a long way in helping others discover this show. For more details on West Recruitment and how we can assist you, please visit us at westrecruitment.com.au. As a leader, how do you support others in your team to find balance while supporting them in their career? Because it's a very tough balance and juggle.
Yeah, that's right. And I think I have to try and model that balance myself. And I think that's, actions kind of, and what people see speak louder than anything. So for me, I try and model as well that it's okay to set boundaries, that, it's okay to take time off, making sure that, seeing if people are working after hours, it's really around how people choose to work to fit in with their life and trusting them. So showing flexibility to the team, obviously we work in a hybrid work arrangement, how we adjust our hours and some people compress work weeks. And so it all comes down to outcomes, trusting your people. Yeah. And generally when things are intense, which it does get intense from time to time, I'll reach out to individuals and make sure they're okay and make sure they're feeling valued and recognise what they've been doing and contributing and offer them to really encourage them to take some time out to reset and recharge. So yeah, it is trying to be a role model, but on the flip side, I also hope that people see that, okay, I'm doing this and I'm living the juggle and that others can do the same thing. Quite often I'll get questions, is it hard raising a family? I'm thinking about whether I should have a family. Is it going to affect my career? And I'm like, yeah, it is hard, but it's possible, so.
Let's talk DE&I for a moment. I know you're super passionate around sort of diversity personally and within your career and within the industry. Why is diversity, equity and inclusion so important to you? And how does it benefit your business? And in your view, how can DE&I benefit the broader energy industry?
Obviously, being a female in a male-dominated sector for more than 25 years, I've experienced a lot, actually. I won't touch on all the details, but there's been a bit of ups and downs there. But Yeah, things have changed and progressed a lot.
Hopefully for the better.
For
is
the
what- yeah,
better,
okay,
for the
good.
better. We
Yep.
still have somewhere to go, but definitely things are improving. So when I had the chance to first lead a team and grow a team, it was actually just so amazing to see the impact that you could have if you had diversity.
Yeah.
So I'd never worked in that before, but I somehow didn't do it by purpose, but it happened naturally because I was open to all sorts of, bringing different people into the team based on merit and what they brought into the team. And so it was such a great thing to see how well it worked having a diverse team. And so in terms of the industry where we're at, we actually need like the biggest talent pool in order to solve the challenges. And we need to have people that also represent what society looks like. And so it requires, in terms of where we're at with the energy transition, it requires so much innovation and different ways of thinking. And that only happens when you have diverse voices at the table. So the next thing is, you can have a diverse team, but they need to feel included and inclusive. And that's what keeps people in the industry, and that's what keeps people engaged and makes a really great workplace. So it is really around making sure that if you have that diversity, you're also valuing it and using it and drawing on it. It's a non-negotiable in my mind, but it is also for those, it does become a competitive advantage if you've got that as well, because you're able to innovate and you're able to add more value, and it really enhances the performance and provides much better outcomes.
Yeah, and I say sort of within our team, and I laugh, we probably have one of the most diverse teams in terms of personalities, cultures, backgrounds, you name it, more than we've ever had. It wasn't something we necessarily went out looking for, but we were naturally open to it. And I sometimes look and wonder how our team works and functions as well as it does, but the different ideas, backgrounds, cultures, personalities add so much in terms of the culture and how well our business runs. It's something where I think, and I hope people keep focusing on giving a few other opinions in the global environment on topics like DE&I. So looking back at your journey and your career journey, what's been the best career decision you've made? And on the flip side, what's a mistake you've made that has taught you something valuable that you can share with our listeners?
Okay, so let's start with the best career decision. It's definitely been choosing engineering or landing in engineering. And that really has been, that's just set up my career. Like in terms of the ability to travel, work overseas, to work across industries and sectors, and the ability to work across so many different roles as well, so from engineering and project management, business management, leadership strategy, like it's just opened up so many doors for me. So I'd highly recommend engineering as a great pathway to be able to steer your career in so many different directions.
Just on that, if I can ask, is there an area where time over again you think the system can help support engineers get into business better or more smoother, do you think?
I think when I went through university, there was probably quite a big push to keep studying and maybe study part of an MBA and get some of those business skills as part of engineering. But I actually found the best thing you could do for me personally was just get real world experience. So getting that real world experience, and then you learn a lot of stuff on the job. So I think it's more the exposure around what are the jobs, what are the pathways, what could you be doing, what does it open up? Like that's
so if you don't have your family member in Germany, what do you recommend people do in terms of picking people's brain or getting that advice? Because I think we had this chat earlier on. I remember when I was at school, and this was 20 odd years ago, career counselling wasn't that great. I certainly hope it's better these days, but what would you recommend people do in terms of getting that career advice?
So I think these days the universities have a lot more connections into industry and also through, bodies like, for instance, the Australian Power Institute, and there are a lot more resources online now where you can actually see the pathways and the opportunities, and there's a lot more interaction, I think, between industry and university. So there's definitely a lot more visibility around what it could potentially look like. So that's, I think these days you can get the answers to most things.
Yeah, okay,
Ask ChatGPT.
Yes. So, as
Oh,
you
yeah,
said, on
the
the flip
mistake,
side,
yeah.
what's a mistake, if you made one, and what did you learn from that?
I find it hard to talk about mistakes because I make them all the time. Just
We all do, don't we?
so I think my kind of key takeaway here is that it's, and I always say this to my children, it's, we're always going to make mistakes, but it's how you react and what action you take after that, which is really important. There's lots of examples of my kids but for me personally, I do a lot of self-reflection in terms of, making a mistake. For instance, I said the wrong thing to someone the other day and I instantly recognized it and then just said, gee, I really managed that badly. Yeah. I'm so sorry. And I think so it's really around recognizing it, rectifying it and learning from it. It's just this constant feeding back in, fail fast approach. So fail fast, move on, use that for the next time you've got, put that into the bank for the next time you've got a similar interaction or you're providing advice to someone or whatever. So as I said, that happen on a daily basis, pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, we
testing
all
the boundaries.
What about from a career perspective? Is there a career mistake you made along the way where you thought, oh, okay, if I had my time over again, I probably would have tweaked that?
Yeah, so I actually, when I came back to Australia, I actually did work for more of an oil and gas company.
Okay.
And because a friend of mine had said, there's lots of money, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And I'd always, up until that point, had been driven by making decisions around, had to have a positive benefit, had to be strong. It was always strong link to the outcome and a positive outcome. And so I joined this company and it just did not sit well with me at all. I lasted 6 months and I had to move. So that was, I kind of followed the route, maybe I'll get some money. And then I can't work here.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Funnily enough, there was another podcast guest who'll be on one of the future episodes, and the biggest mistake he turned around and he said was, I got offered a whole lot of money. I sort of got convinced about the money and knowing it wasn't the right culture, industry, and his passion wasn't there.
The golden handcuffs. So I've been in a situation like that as well. Golden handcuffs, so you're getting paid an extraordinary amount of money, but the culture's not great, and you just can't.
So, talking about the energy industry, what do you personally love about the energy industry, and why should more people consider building a career in it?
I guess, firstly, it's really, for me, that there's a strong link to purpose and impact. Working on something that is ultimately impacting the energy transition and the planet, and it's so complex, and the dynamic nature of it. Full-time job, basically just trying to keep up with what the hell's going on. It's like a sport, really.
Yeah.
What's going on in energy policy. Hopefully there's going to be a lot more certainty over the next few years. But most importantly, I actually really love the community feel of it. Like, it feels, when you go to an event, you feel like you're part of something bigger, and you're friends with your competitors, and you just tend to find there's not a lot of people that are really out there for themselves. It's all for the greater good, and that's what I love.
And that's the reason why you think people should join?
And that's the reason why, going back to the question, that's the reason why people should. The reality is, this is a once in a century transformation that's happening. And so it really is just you're not joining just for a couple of years' work. You basically can form a career out of this. Yeah. So,
God, the last podcast I did with Lyndon Frears, we talked about this industrial revolution. It's sort of the biggest industrial revolution that we will have in our lifetime. And it really is.
It really is.
You can sort of see little pieces of what we're doing. You look at sort of different elements of the market. But if you do have a chance to look at the overall shift or transformation that we are going through, there is nothing like what is happening in the energy space at the moment. So, such an exciting time to be within it. So, within your role, you engage with a wide range of energy clients across the sector. Are there any common themes or challenges you're seeing as companies are navigating the energy transition here in Australia? And this might be a bit of a long list, but we'll see.
Right. So, yes, I do get exposed to a lot because we work across all sorts of clients, private, government clients, authorities, And so there's definitely a lot of clear themes and challenges that keep coming up. But, you know, we start with the developer side. There's just so many developers in the country that have got really ambitious pipelines seeking, you know, to deploy projects across the board. And they're having challenges in, you know, really making that happen. The approvals processes and the issues with, you know, connecting to the grid or having available grid capacity, how they connect into reses. It's all very new in terms of the access schemes. The construction costs, so, you know, a lot of them are waiting for costs to come down. The labour costs, supply chain, you know, there have been an issue around supply chain and just the resource and workforce constraints. So, and not to mention the social licence and community engagement on top of that. So it's really complex and dynamic right across the board. Yeah, look, I think more broadly in terms of, you know, leading up to the federal election and the threat of quite an opposing energy policy has really slowed down, I think, in the last 6 months. So navigating that uncertainty is actually very real, and look, hopefully, you know, we're going to see policies continue to evolve and markets to shift, and the technology landscape's also moving fast. So, you know, so clients are trying to make big decisions with, you know, a lot of complexity and movement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we sort of spoke earlier, like it's amazing. I saw last week after the election how much the market sort of picked up, and I won't say there's a full confidence in terms of people now ramping up the projects, but it definitely does seem like there was a big pause prior to the election for obvious reasons. Yeah, the industry could have gone in two very totally different directions, but I think now it's got certainty. Let's hope it moves ahead and we can hit some of these goals and targets that, we're aiming for. In your view, what do you think the industry needs to get right? And what should we avoid to ensure a successful transition?
So I look at Japan and Korea and other countries, and they have these like 20, 50-year energy security plans. So, you know, I really wish we were there. Yeah. I wish we had really long-term thinking and policy around that really provides the right signals to the market around Australia. Hopefully we're going to start to see more of that. So, for instance, an example might be, you know, we've got some targets in Victoria for offshore wind. Is that enough to attract, you know, when is the next auction happening? How do we attract the full supply chain? How do we give the ports confidence in the industry that's coming so that they can invest in upgrading the ports? You know, how do we learn from each state? So if we're deploying reses in one state, can we try and use what's being done in New South Wales to do, you know, like generator access schemes, like I mentioned before? How can we use what's being done? It's no doubt spent a lot of work developing and use that in other states. So it's all about efficiencies and innovations. How do we do it quicker? We're not going to hit our emissions reduction target if we keep going like this. Yeah. That long-term policy planning, targets, innovation, collaboration are all really critical.
How do we do that?
It's real, like I think the federal government needs to lean in. Yeah. I think
so
at the moment,
in terms of that goal that hopefully they had their sort of good 4 years is now to really ramp it up and
federal
pull
government
the industry
needs
together.
Yeah, because what's been happening is over the years the states have gone on their own. Yeah, which has been great because we've seen a lot of movement and traction. But how do we then pull ourselves together?
Yeah, okay.
And it's not just about the energy transition; it's about the future of Australia. What's going to happen when we can't ship off iron ore?
Yeah.
Like where's our GDP?
Yep. So we'll get out your crystal ball. If you had to make a few predictions, what do you think the energy industry will look like in the next 5 years?
Well, not great at predictions. If I put my optimistic hat on,
I like the optimist.
I would like to think that the next 5 years are going to be absolutely transformational, and that we're going to exceed our renewable energy target of 82% by 2030. That we're going to see, you know, new transmission and reses being built and storage, long duration storage. That we're going to really start to see electrification of transport and other industries. That we'll hopefully start to see some first hydrogen projects in the country to really test. I mean, it's not going to be used for everything, but I know the ARENA Hydrogen Head Start Fund program has identified one project. Yeah, I think we need to start building out some of these technologies to test it. And in terms of offshore wind, you know, I'd really like to see that progressing, particularly in Victoria, that we start seeing projects going through construction phase. And that we're already seeing our resource clients looking at how they decarbonise and electrify. So I think, hopefully that really starts to pick up, and that we are also looking at how we're really enabling critical minerals and producing, in terms of the future made in Australia, how are we looking at green steel and setting ourselves up to replace those current iron ore exports with real green value add. Yeah, so how we're pivoting our industry in that kind of dig and ship mentality.
It's a lot of work to do.
There is, and and also AI and digital will be so far advanced as well, I think, in terms of how we deliver and what the role of the consultant is as we go forward.
Yeah, and I think the overplay of innovation and technology on the overall industry will be incredible to watch.
Yes.
Yeah. Last but certainly not least, mental health and wellness are very important topics to me. And it's something I sort of discuss every episode. And earlier on in this podcast, we talked about sort of finding the balance and how do you look after yourself while you look after the team, while you look after the family. Individually for yourself, how do you personally manage your well-being in such a fast-paced, high-pressure industry? And are there any tools, habits, things you do to keep you grounded and Heidi being Heidi and being happy?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy.
No.
The juggle, as I was saying, the juggle is real and the overwhelm is real. So yeah, a lot of weekends are actually worse for me because I feel like, oh shit, what haven't I done this week and what do I have to do next week?
Yeah.
And it's that space where you actually think, oh my goodness, I've actually got time to think about things. And generally it goes to work. So I need to manage that a lot better. But what I do is I try and write things down.
Yeah.
I do try and clear my head in terms of all those action lists, now, next, later. And I also really try and prioritise exercise. So I ride to work when I'm in Melbourne and I try and go to the gym when I can and just always try and do something active, which really helps. And actually one of the big game changers for me last year was I signed up to the 3 Peaks Challenge, the bike ride, which is a pretty serious event, which I had to train. Actually had to prioritise to train for. So I actually completed it in March, just gone.
So what's that? So it's 3 rides or the one ride where you hit 3 peaks?
Yeah, so it's one ride in under 13 hours or 12 hours. You ride 4,700 metres in elevation and 235 kilometres in under that time. Yeah. And so for me, that was, you have to put the hours in. There's no other way around it. And so for me, that actually that was my priority over work. So when I got to the weekend, I was like, right, training. Yeah. So I can't think about work. So it was.
You must have been putting some hours in on a bike to train for that.
20 hours a week riding on a bike. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but it was very powerful because I actually felt so much happier and I just felt so much more balanced than I normally am. Yeah. So it was really good. So now I need to find another goal.
That's the same as me. I did a triathlon a few months ago and it's great. You work towards that, you hit the goal, but then you have those 4 to 6 weeks afterwards where you do all the things that you shouldn't maybe be doing. And then it's a matter of, okay, getting back on the bike or the training to get back into it. Must be pretty proud for you 2 boys to watch mum do something like that though.
Oh yeah, they didn't come up to see me. They were actually playing soccer. Yeah. My mum was helping out, looking after them. But yeah, they did ring me up and say, "Wow, that's amazing." And I just said, "Look, from 7 a.m. this morning till 6 p.m. tonight, I've been riding." Yeah,
but also for them to be able to see sort of the training and everything you're putting in terms of getting that goal, it would be great for them to see. And at the end of the day, you're doing it for you, but also would have been a good byproduct to sort of for them to see mum achieve such an awesome goal.
Yeah, I think the sticking point was when, like, normally I'd be up riding at 5 a.m, come home and they've just woken up and they're like, oh, you've been out for a ride. Yes. So I think it's those small things that they see that that makes a difference.
It certainly does. Now, well, Heidi, thank you so much for spending time with me on the Powering Your Career podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. As our marketing team always says, if you like the chat, please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. But follow the podcast. Heidi, thanks again for your time. Absolutely loved it. Thanks again.
Thanks very much, David. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Powering Your Career with David Smith. Join me next time as we talk to energy leaders to provide you valuable perspectives on career development, leadership, navigating the energy transition, and strategies for managing mental health and wellness in a high-pressure industry. If you are enjoying this series, please click follow or subscribe for further episodes. And leaving a review or a comment helps others find this podcast. Also, if our team can assist you with any recruitment requirements or you are keen to discuss your career journey, please reach out to West Energy or West Recruitment at westrecruitment.com.au. Thanks.